Hey, and welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited about this episode because we get to talk to another special guest. Her name is Sue Bowles, and she is a survivor turned thriver as an award-winning and Amazon best-selling author, speaker, and ACC accredited life coach. Having done the hard work of healing from a childhood rape and eating disorder and other sexual assaults, and twice considering suicide, Sue uses these life-altering events to catalyze new hope for others. Now, as the chief instigator behind the Dare to Believe movement and founder of My Step Ahead LLC, Sue leads the charge in talking about real things that matter. She gets to the heart of the issue where true breakthroughs and change happen. Through speaking, writing, and coaching, she challenges others who feel bruised, beat up, and broken due to life circumstances to take the next step in their journey, walking with them along the way, so they can live boldly in Christ and fulfill their God-given calling. Sue authored her first award-winning book, This Much I Know, The Space Between, and is a co-author of the Amazon best-selling books, Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 1, and the recently released Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 2. So we're going to go now right into the conversation that Sue and I had. This is Tim Staten with Tim Stating the Obvious. What is this podcast about? It's simple. You are entitled to great leadership everywhere you go, whether it's to church, whether it's to work, whether it's at your house, you are entitled to great leadership. And so in this podcast, we take leadership principles and theories and turn them into everyday, relatable, and usable advice.
And a quick disclaimer, this show, process, or service by trademark manufacturer, or otherwise does not necessarily constitute an implied endorsement of anyone that I am employed by or favors them in representation. The views are expressed here in my show are my own expressed and do not necessarily state or reflect those of any employer.
Hey, Sue, welcome to the show. I know we all just read your impressive bio there, and everyone heard it before, but I just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. I was super excited about it when we first talked about how lonely people have been. And then, it tied into a previous episode that we had talked about where as Americans, right, we are the loneliest we have been in a long time. And there's a recent Gallup poll that went out that said pretty much like 1 in 5 people are feeling more lonely than they have been ever, and a lot more lonely yesterday than the previous days. So I was just curious. So what do you think is a contributing factor to global loneliness and loneliness in this area?
Great question, and a lot goes into that. One of the first things that comes to mind as a big contributing factor is technology. And what I mean by that is that as good as technology is and as helpful as it has also been a detriment. We have lost the art of interpersonal communication. We have lost the art of eye contact, of having to resolve conflict personally face-to-face, of being able to read body language, of listen to vocal intonation, and all of these communication skills that go and add to the experience of human connection have been taken away and replaced with a keyboard. It's a lot easier to hide behind a machine because you're not risking rejection. Because if you don't like what somebody says, you can conveniently say, oh, I never saw the text. You don't have to deal with things.
So when you say we've lost the art of communicating, and you've mentioned a lot of big topics there, let's kind of take this down kind of a little bit one by one. Let's talk about how we've lost the art of communication with body language and why that's so important.
Body language is an unspoken language. And you can read and interpret positively or negatively what someone is saying or trying to communicate by how they act in their behavior. Are their arms crossed? Are they looking at you with eye contact, or are they staring at their phone, or looking out the window, or fiddling with paper on their desk, or doodling? All of those things communicate value. And when we don't feel valued, we feel lonely.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about what it says with the body language is if you're talking to somebody and somebody has their cell phone out, and the powerful message that sends of, hey, I know we're having a conversation, but if something happens on my phone, that's going to be more important than you are at this point. And so since we talked about technology and body language, I mean, what do you think? Do you agree in that sentence that I just mentioned today? Do you think that's prevalent in the world we live in, where we put so much stake into staying connected online versus in person?
Oh, very much so. You've seen the articles and the stories and the memes and the reports about experiments that teachers do. That every time a student gets a notification in their class on their phone, they go up and write a hashtag and mark, is it TikTok, or is it Facebook, or is it a message, or is it WhatsApp, or is it Snapchat, or anything like that. And just so many notifications in just a 45-minute class. So if you have that much going on in 45 minutes, multiply that times being up 14, 18, 20 hours a day. And the influx of stimuli into our brain is making us weary, and we don't realize it because we think we're connected because we know what's going on. But all we know is we're reading something on a screen. And I think that adds to so much that when you're sitting at a meal and you have your phone in your hand, you're not even having interpersonal communication with the person 3 feet from you. And you see so many people are starting put your phones down in the center of the table, turn off the buzzer or whatever,
yeah.
And the first person to grab their phone loses and pays the bill. People are realizing that there's a lack of connection, and they're trying to challenge themselves in an easier way, which hopefully will lead to some self-discipline to put the phone down.
Yeah. I'm just thinking now about, going to the restaurant this past weekend, and I remember looking around, I was like, man, everybody is on their phone, and they're not even really paying attention to the person in front of them, let alone the waiter or the waitress, unless it's, telling them, this is what I want to eat. And so when we talk about that body language of that signals, technology is more important. What about the loss of communication that we have with verbal language versus text messaging versus email? And how does that tie in to loneliness?
So many ways. We don't know how to resolve conflict, because we don't know how to listen. We haven't had to receive constructive criticism or feedback personally, so we don't know how to deal with our own internal emotions, first of all. If you're in a job review and it's not going well, you're going to be experiencing a lot of emotions. Do you know how to regulate those emotions? Mm-hmm. Do you know how to have a professional conversation with your reviewer, most likely your supervisor or HR, and not attack them, not blame shift if there's something that you should take responsibility for, but to look at it as a new phrase I've heard, a growth edge, not a weakness, but a growth edge. Where's the edge of your growth? And over on those edges, things get a little tight. Things get a little uncomfortable. But that's where the growth happens. And when we don't know how to have that interpersonal conversation, when we don't know how to not only read body language, but to absorb what is being shared with us and to assimilate that information and to have an intelligent, professional conversation about it, we lose so much. Because then how are you going to have a conversation with your teenager? How are you going to have a conversation with a dying parent? How are you going to have a conversation with somebody you want to marry? Are you going to propose with a text? We lose so much.
I'm just thinking about it. And when we convey a message via text, I think this might be generational, but I hear a lot of the younger kids saying, hey, well, I can tell the tone of the person that sent that text. Whereas somebody might be a little bit older, might go, you know what, I don't know, this is what they said. Like, it's no big deal. And I'm reminded of a Key and Peele sketch. I don't know if you've ever seen it, where one guy is texting the other guy. He's like, hey, do you want to go out and go do something? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, whatever. He was like, what do you mean? Yeah, sure, whatever. And so one guy's completely fine about the conversation. The other guy is getting super irritated. Like, he really wants to throw down and fight at the end because there's a mismatch in communication on that. And oftentimes we don't even pick up the phone anymore. I don't know in your realm, how often do you feel like, well, if I call somebody, I might be intruding on their time and their personal space, so I'm just going to text instead. How much of that comes into the interpersonal communication that you see today and the issues that you find between interpersonal communication?
And I think that has a place and a point in it. And yes, there's a level of respect involved in that. And at the same time, we are making a decision for someone else without having the whole story. You know, we're assuming that someone is too busy for us, and they might be just as lonely waiting for somebody to reach out to them. Maybe they're sitting at the house alone. Maybe they're having a rough day and haven't told anybody, and your personal contact, not a text but a phone call, is going to help them through, and you might end up having this conversation that this person just needed somebody to hear them. So when and I'm not using some strong language here. I don't want to totally bash technology. Technology has done a lot of things, but I think we have let it get too much in control. It's not a tool. It has become a standard. And I think that's where we're losing some things. Because when yes, I'm the same way. I'm guilty as well. I don't want to interrupt them. But what I've learned in that, as I've worked it through for myself, is that I'm thinking that I don't matter. When I am making a decision for somebody else about my importance in a situation, I'm telling myself I don't matter. And that goes to a whole lot of negative self-talk, and that goes to a whole lot of mental health struggles, and it feeds right into the loneliness. Because we don't have the whole story, so we can't make a valid judgment. We're working off our own assumptions based on our insecurity and how we may be feeling. And we don't give an opportunity for somebody else to be involved in our lives.
That's a really powerful statement when we think for other people and we're making those judgments and we're devaluing ourselves. And you talked about mental health. And I think with the loneliness crisis that is going on, I'm calling it a crisis because, if one in five people say they're lonely, that's pretty big. That's like 23%. And, there's a big push in many instances for mental health, for people to go talk to a professional and work things out. How much of a stigma do you think is there still behind mental health and seeking mental health?
There's still a stigma, and it's getting better. If there's one thing good that came out of COVID is that mental health is now becoming more of a normal conversation. The same way decades ago, breast cancer was not discussed. It was taboo. The more you talk about it, the more you normalize it. The more you normalize it, the easier it is for someone else to reach out and get help. And I'm a master certified life coach, and I've been coaching people for 4.5 years. And I see this when I'm working with my clients. And a lot of it comes back to the assumptions that they are making, the judgments they are making about themselves and projecting that onto someone else. And then the backlash of negative self-talk that comes from that. So I think with the what's the word I'm looking for? With life coaching becoming more prominent, with more health insurances covering mental health services, when you have prominent athletes and prominent musicians and prominent politicians and prominent people in society sharing their struggles with mental health, that goes a long way because it starts giving someone else permission. For me, when Simone Biles shared her story, it gave me permission to share mine. And I am praying for the day I can tell her that personally. She may never know. It does not discount the influence that it had on my life, where I could finally deal with my stuff, and now I'm helping other people deal with theirs. That's the power of having a conversation. That's the power of being vulnerable, and it's the power of taking a risk. And all that translates to daring to believe that you matter.
So for people out there who are currently listening to this and they think, I hear what you're saying, I hear what's going on, but what can I do to make things better? And if you're a leader in a workspace and you're probably listening to this episode and you're thinking, okay, how does this relate to business? I would offer up and I would ask, for your insight on this is, as we talk about mental health, as we talk about people sharing their stories, if people don't know where to start, one, where can they start? And then two, what can businesses do to make their organizations better with normalizing this?
Great questions. The workplace is the workplace, and the common goal is to further the purpose of the company. We all understand that. And the people are the ones who make that happen. No company exists without the people that work at the business. Having said that, employers and companies show the value of their employees greatly in what, for example, health insurance they provide and what is covered in that health insurance. A number of companies now also have an EAP, an employee assistance program. And those also offer 3, 5, 6, however many free counseling sessions for employees and their families. And then resources is something that needs to continue. EAPs also cover so many other things, from investments to end-of-life things to assisted care, elder care, all those things. Attorneys, they provide access to so many resources. And what an employer chooses to provide for their employees goes a long way. Now, that's also higher level stuff. Getting to the everyday conversation of a supervisor and his employee. And his employee keeps coming to work late because they're oversleeping. You can make it a discipline issue, yes. And yes, there is accountability to be had. And in those conversations, ask some questions, because maybe something else is going on. It may or may not be substance abuse. Maybe something is happening and there's some depression starting, and it's harder for that person to get out of bed and show up because they're fighting to get out of bed. Those disciplinary conversations can also become life-saving conversations. And I don't say that lightly, because we don't know the extent to which people are struggling with things outside of the workplace. And as much as we want, as employees, we try to leave it at the door. We're not superhuman. If something's going on at home, someone is sick, or you're struggling with a relationship with one of your kids, or your parent's health is going downhill, or whatever, it's going to affect you. And that may affect safety, that may affect your attitude, that may affect your attendance. So the everyday supervisor has numerous opportunities to just ask a question. And even if the employee isn't ready to talk yet, and granted there may not be anything going on, but that employee is going to remember that. And over time, that employee and other employees are going to get the sense that, hey, my boss really cares about me in addition to the work that I do for the company.
So I'm going to ask you, how often do people say or feel like, oh, my boss or my leadership doesn't care about me?
More often than we like. It is really easy. And you know, it's the nature of the job. I understand that. It's reports. It's numbers. It's what's the bottom line. It's all of these things because that supervisor has accountability over them. It is very easy. All of us can get in our own rut. We get stuck in our own world. And we have to find ways to be very purposeful of having other conversations with people. Maybe it's some kind of monotony break where you buy lunch for the plant and everybody eats lunch together. Maybe it's an annual day at the zoo for the company. And you can, get to know your employees and your coworkers in a different way and get to meet their families that they talk about, that they love, that they are providing for by showing up to work for you every day. There are so many little things. Now, I know there are guidelines about gifts and all these things, but there are also ways that you can work within the guidelines to show your employees that they are more than just a number, that they are more than the work they produce, that they are people, and that you appreciate them.
No, absolutely. And just to echo what you just said, the Gallup poll and the same thing where the workplace report was published for 2024, they said that first-line supervisors, managers, and leaders have the biggest impact on their employees, positively or negatively. So much so where if employee engagement is around 33%, and that's considered good, I would argue it's not, but they're saying 33% is good, you can get up to 70% with a good engaged leader who cares about their people. And the numbers say that. So I would ask you, in your experience, when we have people in better mental health states, what is the benefit for an organization? Besides, we know that the person's happy, but what does that relate to in a tangible effort and outcome for somebody who's looking at the bottom line or looking at numbers?
Well, I think first of all, it's retention. When you have someone who's in a good mental place, they tend to have a good attitude. And when they have a bad day, they bounce back from that and they don't take other people down. So you don't have the toxicity of the chatter that happens away from people. And I think when you have employees that are in a good mental place, they are able to interact with their coworkers in a professional way without yelling and losing it and causing a bunch of drama. It doesn't mean you're going to agree. It doesn't even mean you have to like them. But you do need to respect each other and be able to work together. And when someone's in a good mental place, because their stuff inside is settled, or at least under control, that carries over to how they interact with other people. Because all of us, when we've had a bad day, when something's grinding at us, we are so bound and have the propensity to snap at somebody for something that they don't deserve. And then we have relationship repair to do, and we have a mess to clean up, and you have all that to do. And when someone is able to have some better stress management and be able to realize when their blood's starting to boil and find some way to decompress for 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, you avoid those things. You also have employees who enjoy coming to work. When you have a good attitude, you enjoy coming to work. And again, that comes right back to the retention issues. So all of these things, yes, affect the bottom line. How much does it cost an employer to fill one position? By the time you do the advertising for this position, then you do the interviews, and then you do all the background check and the drug testing and all the onboarding and all the training. All that, if one person just got mad and decided they're leaving this place. And being able to be in a place where you're attentive to your employees, you can tell when somebody's off. You just kind of call them and say, hey, something's up today, or is there anything I can help you with? Sometimes they just want to be asked. Sometimes asking gives them that permission. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, but I'm not ready to talk about it, but thanks for asking. But they know you care. That's the difference.
And that's a huge difference. And I just want to circle this back and tie this back down to that interpersonal communication piece. Because without that, how are we going to recognize if somebody's not doing well? If we're so stuck on, in our own personal realm, in our own personal life, or on our technological devices, and we're not really noticing the people around us, like we're just coexisting together without noticing each other. And so I think it's really important, like you mentioned at the beginning, the interpersonal communication all comes full circle now when it comes to helping people feel more connected. And so I guess my last question to you is, what is one or two things that somebody can do today or tomorrow that they can put in their kit bag and they go, you know what, I'm going to implement this today so I can be better for other people and I can make myself a better person today and a better leader for everybody else? What are two things when it comes to interpersonal skills or interpersonal communications or mental health? What is something that we can do?
I think a very key component, a very baseline, when it all boils down, this is one of the things that comes down to, is our self-talk. And I'm a Christ follower. There's a theologian named Frederick Buechner. He wrote a lot of books, and he talked about the endless chatter of human thought. And today we call it self-talk. Because we don't know what other people are going through, we also don't know the stories they're telling themselves about what they're going through. And if they don't have other outside sources to counterbalance the story they're telling themselves, if we don't have other people in our lives to help us sort through those things, we are taking our story as fact. And odds are that we're a terrible storyteller and we're buying it all. And in essence, we're buying a lie. And suddenly that lie perpetuates itself to nobody cares, to see nobody, I don't have anybody to sit with at lunch. They're mad at me. They didn't respond to my text. What did I do wrong? I'm such a screw up. And it can just continue to steamroll to where it becomes a mental health issue of, if somebody cares, why am I even here? And I think self-talk is a key component. Having identified that, what can we do? First and foremost, we have to be aware of what we're telling ourselves. My company is my step ahead. And our whole focus is you only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. A lot of times we try to tell ourselves that we don't have anything to offer because we don't have quote unquote meaningful life experience. And we flip that on the head and we say every life experience is meaningful. You may have just gone through something that someone else is just starting to go through. You may not have it all figured out, but you can at least help them out with where they are. And as we start realizing that we have something to offer now, even while we figure it out, our self-esteem starts to increase. Our self-talk starts to change. All these things start to steamroll. And before you know it, we're like, yeah, I got this stuff going on and I'm working on it, but I know I can help this guy out too. And maybe we'll support each other. And then suddenly maybe we're not so lonely because then we got something else to be involved with. But that self-talk is the first step. So being aware of that self-talk and then some different things within that. of being aware of what am I hearing and where is it coming from? Is it true? Is it not? Are there certain times when I'm more apt to start falling into negative self-talk and so many other things? I have on my website, I have a free PDF that I offer that talks about, it's called Silencing the Inner Karen. And it has some steps in there to help with this, of how to raise awareness about the things we're telling ourselves. And people can just go to SueBowles.com. He'll have all the notes. They'll be in the show notes and everything. But I encourage them to download it, because that is a key thing that all of us can do to help ourselves. And then as we enter into conversation with others, we are then also able to help them with their self-talk. And that's where those interpersonal communication skills come in, of feeling confident enough to challenge somebody with what they're hearing themselves, what they're telling themselves. The interpersonal skills of being able to help somebody else. And then that self-esteem increasing because suddenly we feel like we have worth. Earlier when I talked about needing to dare to believe that we matter, this is what it's all about. Is daring to believe that you matter, that you have something to offer somebody else right now while you still figure it out.
And those are really powerful words. And I love that. I really do. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I also just kind of wanted to brag a little bit, because you're a 2-time Amazon best-selling author right now, aren't you? I'm just throwing that out there. Like, I mean, you summed that up very well. So if you like that, you're going to love her book. So why don't you briefly just tell us about your new book that just dropped, Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 2.
Sure. Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 2 is an anthology that I've been part of. I was also part of Volume 1 that came out in January. Both of those books went Amazon bestseller in 2 categories. So yes, I'm very honored to be part of that. And in that, there are stories of people who have overcome some kind of trauma, some kind of event or situation in their lives. Some of them are very extreme. Some of them may sound ordinary, and they are not ordinary. And what I mean by that is there are domestic violence survivors. And we can think, we hear about the domestic violence. Okay, it's to be expected. Sorry that happened to you. I'm a childhood rape survivor. I share that story. Wow, I'm sorry that happened to you, but, rape happens. They are ordinary topics, and they are not ordinary experiences. Having said all that, what's powerful about this book is that as people share their story, they're not saying just stuck in their story. They're talking about what has happened and where they are now. You have the past, you have some information about the present situation and where they are going or where they are with it now. My chapter talks about this Dare to Believe movement that I just mentioned. My chapter talks about where it started, and it started with a comment from my counselor. And I actually didn't even identify that until I was writing my chapter. So she and I have had some fun conversations about it. And it talks about a community, a retreat community that I'm involved with called Walking Stick Retreats. And when I went to my first retreat in 2014, I was imploding. I had not shared my story. I had every negative self-talk comment going through my head that you can imagine. And I was trying to hang on. And I took a chance on love. And I was accepted. I was encouraged. And I was lifted up. And through that, through the power of people, God brought deep healing to my life over a number of years to be where I am now, of leading my step ahead, having the books out. I published my own story in 2019, and that also was an award-winning book. So to go through all that started with being a childhood rape survivor at age 7 and not telling anyone for 15 years. So here I am now because I dared to believe that I mattered. And I didn't realize when I went to that retreat, that's what I was telling myself, is that I mattered enough to take a chance. So I'm very passionate about all this because I have lived it and I've seen other people live it. And I'm just convinced that this is where it all starts.
No, absolutely. And I really appreciate you sharing and you coming on to the show to share, your perspective, your knowledge, your background, and everything that you bring to the table. It's incredibly impressive. So thank you for coming on this show.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. I'm thoroughly enjoying everything God has me doing. I speak at conferences, and I'm a keynote speaker, and I do workshops and life coaching and writing. And, if you had told me 10 years ago I'd be doing it, I would have laughed you off the face of the earth because I didn't think I had anything of worth. I didn't think I had anything to offer anybody. Now here I am on your show and doing others. Hopefully, prayerfully encouraging others to take their next step as well.
As always, I want to thank you for stopping by and listening to this episode, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Before we go, I'd like to ask a favor of you, if we could. If you could please share this episode with one or two people who might like this episode and you think would like the topic. If you haven't subscribed on the platform that you're listening to, please do that and hit all the bells, the whistles, and the icons so you know when we release another episode. If you got some value out of this episode, please leave a review or a comment so other people who might not have found the show yet can be led to it by your thoughtful review or your comments. Again, thanks for stopping by. I'm Tim Staten, stating the obvious.